Okay, and it is officially Tuesday at 2, so that means we're going to go ahead and get started. I am Antoinette LaGrossa, and one of the most rewarding things I have done in my almost half a century is advocating for and helping homeschoolers. I've been honored to do that on behalf of Schiller Learning since 2004. Today, we're going to take a look at a commonly asked question, and that is how much time am I supposed to be spending? So, whether that's math or language arts, another variation of that question we get is, well, how long does a lesson take? Or what does a typical day with Schiller Learning look like? And this presentation is going to answer all of those questions, and a foundational piece to that answer is the 3 possible outcomes of a lesson. Now, the tools that we're going to be talking about today, they are included in the Schiller Learning curriculum that you received. They're also available in your downloads, so that if you want to print extras for additional kids, you can just go ahead and do that. So that's actually the first thing we're going to do, is take a look at accessing your downloads, so that if you have not yet already done that, we're going to make it super easy for you. And so the first thing you're going to do is go to either schillermath.com or schillerlearning.com. We are transitioning over to the site to Schiller Learning, but in the foreseeable future, either Schiller Math or Schiller Learning will get you to the same spot. So you're going to go to the home page and click Log In. Once you do that, you're going to get to this page, and you can enter your email and password. Your password, sometimes people don't even realize that they've got an online account set up with us. At the time of your purchase, if you're purchasing directly through Schiller Learning or through a charter school and they've included your email address on the purchase order, the account is set up for you at the time of purchase, and it's in your email receipt. If you don't have it, you can request it from the site, or you can also just contact us. We're always happy to help you, step through that login process. So you just enter your email and your password. You'll notice there are 2 spots to do it on this page. Either one of those is going to work for you. Now, when you first log in, it may look at first glance as though nothing has changed, but this tab up here, the My Account tab, that actually was not up there before you logged in. So you're going to choose My Account, then go to My Downloads, and that's going to take you to the resources and downloads page for our customers. First thing that I want to point out to you is the top portion of this page. You'll see crafts. This is bonus content that's not included in either the math or the language arts, and it's fun hands-on activities, games and crafts for both of those disciplines, both math as well as language arts. So explore that, check it out. There's things in there that young and old alike will enjoy. You'll see some of it is indeed geared towards the younger kids, but things especially like building a balance, that's something that the even middle school kids will enjoy. So be sure to check that out. But what I want to draw your attention to are the Educator Helpers, and that's going to be the completed worksheet, the review test score sheet, and the visual progress report. The parent guide is in there as well. You did receive a printed parent guide in your kit also. If you have a download kit, be sure to check off that parent guide as well. You'll also notice next to those items that you're able to check off and download that there are some links to some things that we want to make sure you're aware of um, to be able to use that information as well as that feature. So one of those is the 3-lesson outcomes, reading about that background. We're going to talk extensively about that in this session. So with listening to this session, you don't need to necessarily go back to that, but anytime you want a refresher, you can just go back and click that link. The personalized learning plan builder, when you're using the diagnostic tests, we really recommend using that feature. It's going to make creating those personalized learning plans easier than ever before. That is probably, my favorite underutilized feature on our site that a lot of people aren't aware of. And we did do a Tuesday at 2 session on the diagnostic testing, and we explain how to use that. That'll be up on the YouTube channel also. Okay, so now you know where to find some extra completed worksheets. That's what we're going to start off talking about. So you're going to check that off, scroll to the bottom of your downloads page, hit submit. Oh, just a second there. One note about that is you'll see here that you can also recommend Schiller Learning to a friend. You do not have to do that in order to access your downloads. However, I do also want to let you know that we have a referral program so that if you tell a friend about Schiller Learning and they end up purchasing a kit, you actually get a $10 referral credit towards your next purchase, as well as that person being able to get $10 off of their initial purchase. So that is something good to take advantage of. And if you're not sure how to use that, you can also always let your friend know to simply call to place that order, and we can make sure you both get that $10 off. Okay, so you'll hit submit, and then on the next page there, you're going to see the links for the items that you just downloaded. And here you can click on those PDF files, or my favorite shortcut here is to simply right click on it, choose save link as, and I save them to my computer so that every time I want to access that particular thing, I don't have to always be going back to the site. Okay, so now you've got your completed worksheet. Again, these are also in the back of your Math Kit 1 lesson books, your language arts lesson books, and they're even in the front of the language arts lesson books also. And you got, if you have language arts B or Math Kit 1 fractions or Math Kit 2, you also received additional printed copies of those. Now, excuse me, just a second. I'm going to take a sip of that tea that I have sitting here. I apologize for my allergies there. Okay, so how long does a lesson take? We believe that the educator's main role is to provide children with the proper tools, which you have with Schiller Learning, and a learning-friendly, prepared environment. That's our job as the educator. Rather than you always instructing from the top down, how many practice problems your child needs to do or when he needs to move on from an activity, we recommend giving ownership of the education to the child. And the sooner he's able to do that, the better student he's going to be in all subjects. We do not believe in telling you that your child, along with every other child in the country, is going to learn the same thing in the same amount of time on the same day. It just doesn't happen. It's urban legend. And so, as opposed to saying, well, this lesson is going to take 15 minutes, it's going to be different for every child. And you'll find that the amount of time it takes a child to go through a lesson varies from day to day and child to child. So there really is no typical day when it comes to Schiller Learning. Schiller Learning is going to offer a simple but powerful learning management tool to help you accomplish that just right practice that we're looking for. And that's that completed worksheet you have on the screen there. If you do not have Schiller Learning curricula, by the way, just message us in the chat box with your email address or email sales@schillerlearning.com and ask for the completed worksheet. We'll send that to you with no obligation. This is great, not only for math and language arts, but to print and use for all of your subjects. It's a powerful tool for all disciplines, whether you're using Schiller Learning curricula or not. In the beginning, the parent educator will help fill this out, guiding the student to what is being recorded and why. So we recommend that you start with 15 minutes a day for a 3 or 4-year-old and add 5 minutes a day for each year of age after that. You're going to work according to time as opposed to saying, it's the 34th day of school. Jane is going to do XYZ today. It's going to be different for every child. And then however many lessons they do in that amount of time, that's what's right for them. And that you will do up to adding 5 minutes a day for each year of age after that, up to about 45 minutes to an hour for those older students, into their teens who are in Math Kit 2. Do note that you want to adjust this as appropriate for special needs. So sometimes, we have older students who are working for a shorter period of time because that's what's appropriate for them. So how much repetition does a child need in order to master a new skill? It varies. And what we want to have happen is that the student learns to recognize when he or she truly understands and has mastered something versus when he or she needs to keep practicing that skill. The completed worksheet is an easy way to track your students' progress and is convenient for record keeping too. If you happen to homeschool in a state that requires reporting, I'm in Pennsylvania. We definitely have to do reporting, and I found this to be a convenient tool. Just fill in a line for each day's work, date, minutes worked, list of lessons successfully completed, and the list of lessons to be revisited. The student who has taken ownership of his or her education is internally self-motivated and driven by a desire to learn rather than external motivation of pleasing another or external punishments. So the question you want to know then is, are you going to record the lessons, the lesson that you've done in that column for lessons completed or in the column for lessons to be revisited? Let's first answer the question of, well, what is the goal of a lesson? That depends on whether or not we are achieving that goal. No matter the objective listed, the goal for every lesson is that the student achieves both competency and closure. And yes, it can look like this for your child, or at least in their head. Um, so those two, both the competency and closure, are crucial to achieving the goal for each lesson. The child is solid on that skill at the understanding level of that lesson, and he or she is ready to move on. There are three possible outcomes to a lesson. In the first possible outcome, the student has achieved both. The child gets it and is ready to move on. In this case, to continue practicing something referred to often as drilling is not appropriate and would only foster frustration. Be respectful of the child. It's best to move on. That concept will continue to be built on in subsequent lessons using a different learning style. So great, good job. Let's note that in the column for lessons completed and move on to the next lesson. We have seen students cover 10 or more lessons in a row in one sitting, and that's a good thing. One other note too about the time to spend, you'll find that with the multi-sensory approach that Schiller Learning is using, that visual, tactile, auditory, and kinesthetic, that kids will often want to go beyond their recommended time frame. And that's great too. It's just not something that we want to force upon them to do long sessions. The longest uninterrupted math session that I had done, and this was with little kids, was 2.5 hours, because they just wanted to keep going on to lesson after lesson after that. And then at the end, I was actually the one to say uncle. Okay, so the second possible outcome of a lesson is that the student achieves competency, but not yet closure. The student gets it, but they want to repeat that activity, that lesson, over and over and over. This usually happens when the dominant learning style of the student and the dominant learning style of the lesson match. They've not yet gleaned every possible benefit from this activity. Now, sometimes this can be a little bit of a challenge for us as parents to let happen, because we see they get it. And, my type A personality is, okay, well, they get it. I want to check that box off and keep them moving. We caution against that. In this case, it's best to just walk away. Let the student develop focus and concentration as the lesson is repeated until the student decides he or she has closure. Moving on before the student has closure could actually foster anxiety and hinder development of those crucial focus and concentration skills. We've seen students work on the same lesson for 3 days in a row, or even, revisiting a lesson periodically for weeks. That's a good thing. Kids are really good at letting us know when they're bored and ready to move on. Okay. The third possible outcome of a lesson is that the student reaches neither competency nor closure. The student is not solid on this skill. He or she does not get it, so of course there isn't closure on that skill either. The worst thing that an educator can do in this case is to stay on that one thing and drill. This will only foster low self-esteem and unnecessary anxiety. It's going to go counter to the goal of helping to build that solid foundation and not leave any gaps. Okay, so if they're not getting it, how do we ensure that that solid foundation is being built? We do that by go ahead and placing that lesson number into that column for lessons to be revisited, and move on to the next lesson. We don't want that to bog them down in their progress. And then by moving on to other lessons where they're going to be more successful, it actually helps to rebuild their self-confidence and adds understanding in other ways. Then what we're going to do is periodically add that activity back into the work until it is mastered, maybe every 2 or 3 days. And then once they are mastering that skill, then we're just going to drop that off the lessons to be revisited and shift that over to the lessons completed, so that the repetition is going to be tailored to each individual child's needs. When they're picking up on things more quickly, they're going to move through the curriculum at an accelerated pace. And if they need that extra time and repetition in order to master something, they're going to be afforded that. So the curriculum itself is a spiral, gives you bite-sized chunks of different concepts, helps keep them interested and engaged, but within that spiral, they're working to mastery, again, at their individual pace. Now, in that third possible outcome, where they don't have the competency or closure, sometimes not only is that case, but the child hits a wall. They are, you see that frustration and anxiety building. Sometimes we're tempted to externally push the child through and get them to complete the lesson, even if it's, we see them in frustration and pain. Among Maria Montessori's excellent advice is to avoid allowing a child's boredom or frustration to build. It's better to say something like, I see that you're not developmentally ready for this lesson. Let's put it aside now and we'll revisit it in a few days. At this point, even if they don't quite understand the word developmentally, a student will usually take one of two attitudes. And the first is that they are super relieved. They are very happy. We haven't made an issue out of it. We have not demotivated or demoralized our child. And we're simply going to place that lesson again in that column for lessons to be revisited and move on to the next lesson. And this we are doing without even having to have gone all the way through that lesson. Okay, so sometimes they're going through the lesson and not achieving that competency and closure. But if you see they're hitting a wall, don't even be tempted to finish the lesson. Put it aside, and then you're going to periodically reintroduce the activity as if for the very first time. Gosh, my allergies, they are not great. Again, we're going to reintroduce the lesson as if for the very first time. We're not going to betray any frustration on our part with our body language or tone of voice, or by the reminder that, oh, this is the part of the lesson where we bailed last time, or similar demotivating commentary. When a child has hit the proverbial wall, it often just takes 1 or 2 attempts at reintroducing the lesson for it to suddenly just click for them. What a much better learning experience. If you have a subject anxious child, be it math, language arts, or anything else, you will be amazed at the power of this approach to erase that anxiety over time and how the student indeed becomes a self-motivated learner. And speaking of that self-motivated and inner drive, there is actually sometimes, rather than feeling relieved when you say to the child, I see you're not developmentally ready for this, let's put it aside, the child can feel challenged. What do you mean I'm not developmentally ready? No, I want to do this. That's also great. The student is taking charge. He or she may experience some angst before completing the lesson, but as long as the student wishes to continue this angst, it's the good kind. You know, the bad kind is when we push to do when the push to do the lesson is external. The educator can say, you know, I see this as hard for you, but I'm impressed that you're working so hard and trying to understand. With self-motivation and determination, they're going to power through what a moment before could have been demotivating. They're going to build grit in doing this also. And when the student does finally get it, the joy of discovery is a reward he or she will strive to experience again and again. And in this case, now, initially they didn't get it, but now they've powered through and worked through that lesson. Depending on that outcome, whether or not they've achieved both that competency and closure, this lesson may go in either the lessons to be revisited or the lessons that were successfully completed. Another alternative way for your child to track their work, in addition to that completed worksheet, is the visual progress report. This you can access in your downloads. Earlier in the presentation, we saw where that was, right in with the Educator Helpers. Along with your completed worksheet, with this, the child can color in the block for the appropriate lesson they have successfully completed. And this is going to give them at a glance a great visual of their progress through the school year. And you know, as they're working hard, they'll be able to see like, wow, I'm really accomplishing a lot of good things here. This is also really handy if you're not following the curriculum sequence as it's laid out, and you're using those the concept and the manipulative indexes to, you know, kind of jump around and, you know, follow the child's interest, which is actually going to be the topic of our next session, using those concept and manipulative indexes, and veering off the beaten path, the sequence as it is laid out in the program. But if you are mindful of the amount of time that you want your child to spend, that 15 minutes a day for a 3 or 4-year-old, adding 5 minutes a day for each year of age after that, adjusted as appropriate for any special needs, up to about 45 minutes to an hour for the older kids, and mindful of those 3 lesson outcomes, and being sure that you're appropriately using that lessons to be revisited column, you're going to create a perfect personalized learning program for your child that's really going to meet them where they're at and advance them in their development. For the gifted child, it's going to move them through at an accelerated pace. For the special needs child, it's going to make sure they've got the additional practice and time exactly where they need it. It's going to avoid kids being bored. And by engaging your child in managing that, you're going to give them ownership of their education. And again, you know, the earlier the child is able to take ownership of their education, manage that learning with those sheets, the better student they're going to be in everything. And the good news is that with the diagnostic testing, it's going to catch if indeed there was not enough practice on any of those concepts, and redirect you back to visit those lessons that taught everything. So there is a fail-safe built into the curriculum to ensure that indeed, no matter what, every child is getting that solid foundation in either math or language arts.